But you know what? That would be more boring.
Welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing. I'm Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall.
Tonight's topic is phrasing, and we're going to be analyzing a really wonderful dance video between Kyla Red and Melissa Roots from Monterey. I'm going to drop the YouTube link in the chat right now. So everybody go ahead and go watch the whole video and then come back and let us know when you're done, and we'll get to analyzing. So tonight, we're focusing on phrasing, and I have bookmarks for each major phrase change in both songs. You can see them as the vertical green like hash marks at the top and bottom of the video, which is helpful to know when one is coming up.
Melissa thinking, this is Tuesday.
What is this? I know. And it's so funny after our episode with the amazing Larissa Tingle, saying that this is maybe Kyle's tell that he doesn't know the song.
Though
He's
I'm
doing
pretty sure
something
that
other than dancing.
they chose to do the unknown song. So
yeah. So you'll notice that this first phrase change actually happens only 2 8 counts into the song, and you can see how Kyle like literally connects on it.
Yep.
Like right on the dot. So one of the simplest ways to think about phrasing is to make a change to what you're doing that has the same amount of change as there is change in the music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So usually at the beginning of the songs, there is an intro. It'll be like, usually it's like maybe 2 8 counts or so, but it varies. But at the very beginning, it's before there's a beat that comes in. And so during that part, it's really important to keep that in mind, that there is no beat. If it's like in an intro, a lot of people like to start going immediately, but when there's not a beat, it's really important to just like keep it casual, because there's just not that intensity in the song to need so much movement. And so this very beginning phrase, once the beat comes in, you can see the way that they're interpreting it is by keeping things like smaller in terms of movement across the floor, so they're not traveling a ton. And then also you can see more in Melissa, but also in Kyle, is that, you know, the upper bodies are staying more quiet. There's not a lot of movement. It's mostly just in like the legs, the feet.
Yeah, so I went back to where the beat kicks in, and then they spend so much time here just chilling. I'm just going to hold the arrow so it moves forward a little bit faster.
Yeah.
But they spend the majority of this phrase just chilling in closed position. Mm-hmm. And it's not until halfway through the phrase that he sends her out.
Right.
And they actually start having a slotted dance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like one thing to note for this, it looks like Melissa is doing a lot in comparison to where the music is at, but because she isn't actually like moving, she's doing something in one place, it's still keeping things quieter.
Mm-hmm.
So even though she is like moving, ronding around and whatnot, like it's just, there's not as much going because she's not having any like movement. That's what creates a lot of extra noise, which is why you tend to see a lot of movement in spotlights.
Yep. Now for this phrase change right here, the one of the new phrase corresponds with the one of their pattern. So that's one of the first simple things you learn to do, is to try to coincide the one of a pattern with the one of a phrase. So that's a very simple thing that they're doing right here.
Mm-hmm. And you can see, like, coming into this next phrase, Melissa's adding more upper body into what she's doing as the music is building. But it's still nothing drastic.
Yeah, and Kyle is also encouraging a longer slot as time progresses.
Right. This is also a really good moment. Just this like sustained extension between the two of them. That's something that is really good for like showing calmness or showing a note that's held. So even if it's not like a note that's being held for a long time necessarily, extending that movement in that type of way is going to keep things quieter, but also you're going to have a lot more control there.
So we're about halfway through this next phrase now. And notice how the movements are getting bigger. So like, if you think of a phrase, generally a 32 count section of music, you want to slowly escalate over that time what you're doing. And so like what Alicia was speaking to earlier, when you start out at the beginning of a dance with higher energy, to phrase effectively from there, you have to continue escalating your energy. So that's why it's often a lot better to start with a lot less energy, with smaller movements, so that way you have somewhere to go from there. Because like, see this energy of them really traveling across the floor right here, right leading up to the next phrase change, that wouldn't be as dynamic and interesting if they had been dancing with the same amount of energy and space from the beginning. And right here is the phrase change where he brings Melissa down.
Which is a nice way to hit the phrase change.
Yeah, it was excellent. I'm going to go back a little bit so we can see that little section again.
Yeah, so something I will note that's not necessarily about Kyle and Melissa, but within the music, so you have a phrase which is going to be 4 8 counts. And typically, if it's a song that you don't know, you can fairly easily like guess what's going to come next. A lot of times in songs, so like the verses, you'll have 2 8 counts, and then the next 2 8 counts will repeat the pattern of the first ones. So that's kind of a nice way to kind of play around with music that you don't necessarily know as well. You can kind of do something a little bit scaled back for, you know, the first 2 8 counts to kind of see where it's going. And then for the second 2, you can kind of do more with it. Now that you kind of know where, you know, you have an idea of where the music is going. Just a note.
Yep. And another thing to keep in mind, especially for those of you who compete in Jack and Jill's, part of deciding how much, like where you can go from your starting point, also depends on the capabilities of yourself and your partner. So this is where road mapping comes into play. And that's the framework of using the first like 32 counts of a song to gauge what your partner is capable of if you're not used to dancing with that person or have never danced with them before. And you use that time to decide what your partner's A game is, so you can save that A game for the part in the song where you have max energy.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you are a novice leader, for example, and you've drawn a follow in a Jack and Jill that you've never danced with before, and you decide in the first 32 counts that their A game is a double outside spin from a whip, you save that and you use it with intention to create overall structure and phrasing and contrast to your dance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing to like add to that is I would say that even like the first, like the intro and then the first verse of the song, I would say to kind of, you know, take it slower, don't do too much craziness. Like you want to save that for the chorus usually.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually you're going to have the chorus is going to be more upbeat. There's more instrumentals to it, more vocals. You know, there's more layers to the chorus than there is to the intro and or the verse ahead of it. So you really want to, you know, just use that beginning of the song to feel things out.
Yep. I love this transition into this phrase change.
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to go back to this part so we can see this phrase as a whole again. I'm going to try to click through it so it's a little bit faster. But they start repeating a very similar pattern with how their dance has been structured before. They keep things a little bit smaller and tighter for the first 2 8 counts of a phrase. And then they start increasing their energy about halfway through. And that's when Kyle starts shifting their slot back towards the center of the floor.
Mm-hmm.
My finger can't click any faster than this. I'm sorry. Yeah, right here. We are halfway through the phrase at this point in time. And Kyle starts, I love this shuffle in close position.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so connected.
Mm-hmm. And it's choosing a very good moment in the song, because in the song at this moment, I believe it's kind of like a repetitive, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it's a repetitive little section. So they're choosing to also do something that's a repetitive little section.
So the last 8 of a phrase in the music tends to have this anticipatory nature to the way it's structured.
Yeah.
It's like, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. And they're using that moment in this 8 counts to set up this phrase change. And the one is right about here.
Yeah, so I appreciate that they are acknowledging that phrase change more so by stopping a movement rather than starting one. And I believe we talked about it before in another episode, I think with maybe Robert and Brian. But like building up to the phrase change, that last 8 count is really important. But, you know, a lot of times what you can do is just do something repetitive. So, you know, spins or, you know, the same footwork, something like that.
Or pivots.
Yeah. And then rather than like start to do something big on that phrase change, you just stop doing that continued movement.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a better way to hit like a phrase change that's maybe going from the chorus to a second verse or
Mm-hmm.
third, rather than like a first verse to a chorus.
Yeah, and it comes back to what I was saying earlier. It's like, is the change you're making in your dancing the same kind of change that's happening in the music?
Right.
Is the music going up or is it going down?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear that kind of clicking music?
Yes.
Okay.
So I really enjoy how much Melissa is using her body in this moment. Like every part of it, she's releasing the neck.
That's really fun backwards.
She's really allowing the upper body to continue what the lower body is doing.
And I really appreciate how Kyle is creating the space for that with a very variable frame.
Mm-hmm.
So if you watch Melissa's right arm, it stays more stable and constant throughout all this styling that she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Kyle's, like right here, it becomes very obvious. He's creating a lot more variable in his arm to help accommodate for that.
Right. Well, and you know, to note, like, had he not done that, she would not have the momentum to go into what she did.
Yeah.
Quite the same way.
Yeah.
Him absorbing a lot further back is going to give that send forward a lot more energy, and so she can catch that energy and work with it. And so if you don't get as much send forward, you're going to not have as much momentum to work with. So things aren't going to look quite as large or words. I don't know.
Yeah, it's okay. We've used so many words today that we're running out of them. Anyways, going back to this moment, this is where it transitions to the second half of this phrase. And Kyle increases energy and starts escalating by passing Melissa and taking up more space on the floor.
Yeah.
And that's how he starts building up towards the next phrase change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so he's really using that movement across the floor. But Melissa, you can see, is also doing something. She's like extending her limbs really far out to kind of match that.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he's kind of moving around her more so than she's moving. Yeah, so you can see she has that arm really extended out.
Mm-hmm. The joys of being in a spotlight.
Right?
I would probably injure someone on a heated floor if I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are coming up towards the next phrase change, and you can already tell things have changed. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there is a marked difference between this second half of this phrase and the first half earlier.
Right.
And right here, when Melissa places her left foot back, that's the one of the new phrase. And like Alicia was talking about earlier, they mark this one by slowing down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is also because it's going from a chorus to a verse.
Yep.
And then right here, so the music has gone down significantly from where it was at, and you can see Kyle's not leading as much energy. Melissa is just doing a lot more with the beat.
Yep. And this is also the point where they know that this song is coming to its end. So they're just kind of letting it chill. So that first song is over. And I know I didn't mention this earlier. For those of you, if this is your first night with us, if you ever have a question, feel free to unmute yourself or ask in the chat, because we love answering questions.
So, song 2. So we have a faster song going on here, and even though we were talking earlier about keeping things really quiet, you need to make sure to start out that quiet level, where the song's at. So this song, it only has beats for the first, I don't know, however many, I think, 4 counts, something like that. Before the words actually come in, the lyrics.
Yeah, the phrase kicks in right here.
The one thing is, rather than starting out really quiet, they're starting out with a little bit more energy because you can hear that strong pulse.
And so it's a faster song.
Yeah, and it's a faster song, right? So once the lyrics come in, you can see they actually slow it down a little bit because you have some extended notes and whatnot. So they're going with that rather than that background music that they started with. And that's, something that is up to you and your partner based on, song, moment, whatever. But it is okay to start something out with a little bit more higher energy than you maybe would with a slower song.
Yep.
You just need to make sure there's still somewhere to build to.
Yeah. So they're just picking a baseline where they can go somewhere from there instead of locking themselves into a sprint. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But they're being playful with it. So it's partnered, but they're just chilling.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate how the phrase change happens on count 3 of this pattern right here. So it's by having a quick spin for Melissa on that phrase change, it's helped setting the tone for this being a higher energy dance. And it's just a really simple thing, but it still marked the phrase change really well.
And you can also see that she is kind of forward at an angle, which is going to add some more momentum to what she is doing. And she's going to be able to move faster to react to that phrase change. Yeah, so you can still feel that they have a higher energy than in the first song. Melissa's a lot lighter on her feet, specifically, but it's still quiet. They aren't using their upper bodies quite as much.
So we are now about halfway through this phrase. I'm starting to notice a pattern with Kyle that I'm really appreciating. How he tends to let the first 2 eighths of a phrase be about moving Melissa up and down the slot, and then he adds a change by moving himself and adding more momentum that way.
Yeah.
But I like that ratio because as a leader, once you learn how to move yourself up and down the slot, it's really easy to get into a holding pattern where you're actually traveling up and down the slot more than the follow throughout a song. And that's not what West Coast swing is.
Right.
Yes, a leader can do that, but that's not the dominant pattern of what a leader should be doing in their role. And Kyle is very strategically adding in his own movement about 2 times per phrase in the second half of each phrase. So you can see right here, that was another phrase change right here.
Yep.
And he's spinning her, but then he is then taking momentum himself and pointing at the audience because, yeah,
Of course.
so good.
You got to get that little moment in.
Oh, yeah.
But like I was saying earlier, they're having that phrase change where they're actually slowing something down.
Yeah. So there's a quick like acceleration into this moment. And this moment is more powerful because something fast happened before it. So something slow is more powerful if something fast happened before it, and something fast is more powerful if something slow happened before it. And same with after the fact. When you sandwich something with its opposite, it becomes more evident. Now that's a sentence that taken out of context would mean nothing.
So you can see here there's a lot more movement going on from both of them. And then Kyle does this.
Yep. Because this is the point where they're about halfway through this song. They're probably getting tired.
Yeah.
So at this point, there's a little bit of not just musical phrasing going on, but how can we use the phrasing to our advantage to not work too hard?
Yeah. And he chooses to make it a little bit of a comedic moment.
Yeah.
I do enjoy comedic moments every now and then.
Me too. Like when they're choice and purposeful, it's really fun. So here again, we're ramping up to the phrase change, and Kyle is choosing to move himself, once again pointing at the entire audience. I hadn't noticed that at speed.
I didn't either.
When he does those two things. It's awesome. So that was a sudden acceleration and change, and now we're having a 1 of the pattern with the 1 of the phrase again. Really simple.
Yeah. I don't think I can emphasize enough how important phrasing is in fast songs.
Yes. It is. I always consider it my superpower when I'm leading in particular. Because if I get a fast song, I use phrasing to manage energy, so neither myself nor my partner are working too hard.
Right.
And using that strategy, I would say, is one of the things that has helped me be really successful competitively as a leader. And whenever I'm following a leader who does that, I am so grateful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely important for multiple reasons.
Right, coming up on another phrase change.
Yeah.
So again, we've got some more traveling, but this time as a partnership. And then it's going to be a hitch. I'm imagining a skip it on her right ankle when she does that. Does everybody remember those things?
Yep.
So, for those of you who've been with us for a while and heard us talk about center counterpoint a million times, This is where the center counterpoint moves towards Kyle very suddenly, and that's why she skips forward.
Yep.
Because he brought the center counterpoint to him, forcing her to accelerate forward to not die. So right here, you can see the hands start moving screen right. And she's like, oh, skip to my life. There we go.
I
And then this
appreciate
is what?
how much she dampens that momentum.
I know. That was mad skills right there. So now if we think of phrasing in the larger context, not just like 32 count chunks, we are now in the final section of what will be this song for them. Mm-hmm. So we're hitting kind of like, if you relate it to like a story, like the climax or the denouement of a story, like we're hitting the point of maximum energy before it like resolves. Yeah. So everything is intensifying at this moment, including the humor. And it's about to get worse. And by worse, I mean better, because I love it. And so they're building to the apex of energy and expression and space.
Yeah, you can
for this
see
final phrase change.
There's not as much grounding happening from either of them because there needs to be more momentum.
Yep, it's the home stretch.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to this beautiful moment. We have a sugar duck. And then I used to lead Rosie Thor in something very similar to this. Yeah.
I just really enjoy the reactions in the back.
So good.
Chris and Tony specifically.
I know, right here. Chris is losing his mind right in between them, and it looks like he's kind of tearing up. He's laughing so hard. But right about here, right here is the phrase change. So arguably the most intense moment of this whole song happened right before this phrase change, and now they're just going to coast home.
Yep. With
this last phrase. Yeah, Chris is just losing it. It's just.
So is Tony. It's great.
So good.
Yeah. So there's a lot less happening now. So I do like that accelerated send out.
Yeah. They're not really traveling up and down the floor. They're just kind of staying in place or trading places. So even while it still has a lot of energy because it's a faster song, in comparison to what they were doing before, it is less. And they're just grooving and having a good time as the song comes to a close. And this is the other phrase change before the song starts
fading out.
Fading out, yeah. I love her little skip right there.
Yeah, I know.
So cute. And Kyle's like, can I have some water now?
Is it sad that I'm bothered by the fact that that's not the right kick line home?
Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez. Kick
Yelled it
lines are
I've done
kick
and
lines are serious, people. They're serious business.
it's not fun. Always hated it.
My rotator cuff just cringes thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, are there any questions, comments, funny jokes, anything we've talked about so far tonight? And also, over on our Patreon, we are analyzing this same video this week and next week. And so this month, our theme is grounding. And so we're going through both songs and highlighting moments where Kyle and Melissa are grounded on their own, and moments where they may appear to be grounded, but they're not, and really getting into the nuance distinctions between those two things. So that's what we're doing with our Patreon patrons. That's an alliteration that's a little hard to say.
I have a question about something.
Yes.
How can you tell when a leader and a follower have really good dance chemistry? What makes really good dance chemistry on the dance floor during like a Sweet 16 or a spotlight event? What makes it really good? How do people get that connection that's really strong and that makes the performance really dynamic? How do you get to that point at the performance?
That's an excellent question. Do you want to
Yeah.
go first, Alicia?
No, you can go ahead.
All right. So a few things that come to mind. The first one is both being equals and treating each other as equals. Like, we're in this together kind of a thing. If one person is kind of taking over, that means the other person has to like dampen their light. And you can see this sometimes where like really large personalities will draw each other in a Jack and Jill, and they kind of fight a little bit. And so the first thing is just mindset. Like, we're a team. Let's create something together that is unique because we as individuals are coming together to make something. And I really like noticing in this particular video how Kyle would very strategically like move himself down the slot about once or twice every phrase to kind of give Melissa a break, but also to highlight himself, but not so much that it's detracting from her. It was really strategic and really lovely. And then the other thing is just knowing the function of West Coast Swing Connection like the back of your hand, and understanding center counterpoint. And usually the dances that we see that are the most connected, it's when that center counterpoint is really engaged and both partners can feel in their whole bodies where their partner is to be able to react naturally to that. And then the only other thing is helpful, because sometimes you'll have like all those things in place, but you'll both have very different personal interpretations of a song.
Yep.
And this like, you'll hear a song, and especially if one person knows it and the other person doesn't, and it's one of those songs that may sound happy, but if you know the lyrics, you know it's really sad, then one person's dancing a sad song and the other person's dancing a happy song, and it's just no bueno. But like being on the same page with what you want to create is also helpful, but that's really difficult to do unless you really know the person and you have a history with them. So that's why true Jack and Jills can be so interesting. It's like, ooh, we just put sodium in water. What's going to happen? So that's what came to my mind first.
Yeah. I mean, I have a very similar answer. A lot of times it has to do with mindset. If you are both in the mindset of, you know, we need to do cool things to win, that's going to cause a lot of fighting between your partner and yourself. And rather than do that, I've always kind of gone with thinking that, you know, you're just dancing together, right? You want to not think the whole time about it being a spotlight. You need to take those moments, but if you're trying to be showy the whole time, a lot of times you're going to disengage from the partner, either, you know, just your actual connection or like visually, you will, you know, disconnect from your partner. And so even if like you maybe still have some connection, but then you're disengaged to the audience, your attention is now out there, right? So even if there's still a good connection, it's something like if you get led into something or if the follow does something, then it's going to be more surprising because you're not focusing on the connection. Like the connection might be there, but because you're thinking about something else, any kind of like movement is going to be a little bit jarring, right? Because it's like you have your attention out here. Oh, now it needs to be back here. And it's like very sudden. So I think that really choosing the moments to do that, because otherwise you're going to have a full dance of that with both people, right? And that's going to be harder for everyone involved. So yeah, that was kind of my answer.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
did that answer your
Thank you for
question?
that question.
Oh, you both explained it very well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for asking. It's a
Yeah.
great question.
So we are almost at 8.
Yeah, we actually had a shortish episode today. Wow.
Which is great.
It helps so we're not analyzing physics. Music is faster. Yeah, next week, so excited. We're having Austin Coas and Janelle Guido with us. We're going to be talking about their excellent dance from Capitol. Go ahead and subscribe, hit the notification bell, all those shenanigans so you never miss an episode. And we also do some fun teasers about our Patreon, which is patreon.com/NERDYWCS. And it's only right now $25 a month. And we get super in-depth, but without absorbing all your time on on a topic every month. It's a lot of fun.
For this week, I am creating a checklist to go through for finding grounding in like a video that you're watching.
Because it's not necessarily happening when you think it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's more rare than one might think and what one might be led to believe when learning this dance. It's a tool like any other. You have to use it in the right moment for the right purpose. It's fun. We're having all the nerdiness and it's getting worse by the day. We are getting nerdier by the day. It is fantastic. Thank you all so much for joining us. Hope to see you back next week when we have Janelle and Austin with us. That's going to be so much fun. And it will probably run long like our episode with Larissa because we just have too much fun. So have an amazing evening or rest of your day. And we'll see you next week.
I love that Kyle starts doing like kick line at the end.
All right, time to share the screen. If I remember what to click. My brain is just like Windows 95 computer tonight. I can do this. Okay.
So we're starting out at a good place.
It's a good place. It's oldie but a goodie? I don't know. Can you see my screen? That's all that matters. Okay, good. All right. Are you stuck in here again, Emma?
There, like the chat is on the side and it's never been on the side before. And now the buttons look different.
Just pretend ASMR tonight. It's fine. Hello, Emma.
That's not soothing. Cassie, that's not soothing. Hello, how are you? I'm going to soothe you to sleep.
Batman.
Do you like this?
Definitely Batman.
You're staying here, right?
No, I'm leaving.
Okay, because I'm not taking a key.
I'm gonna change the
You
locks.
can pull earbuds out so you can hear boy.
Nope. Don't come back.
Bye.
Nope.
We're going to hang out.
You know, where I own a lot of knitting needles, guys. I could be deadly.
Well, after you said knitting needles, I was like, Emma Sackett in the craft room with the knitting needle.
Did you just say MP3 player? Who still has one of those?
We have MP3 players. Where's the X? Stop laughing at me.
Sorry, we can always kick you out. Like, we have the power.
No,
if
I
that would
found
be
it.
helpful.
Oh God, why can't you just? That's so much easier. Be like, hey, Cassie, beam me down.
Beam me
Bring me down, Cassie.
Cut her off at like the exact right moment, and then
Cut
just
off my umbilical
done.
cord. I'm ready to exit the womb.
What is
I
happening?
needed to laugh this. I have needed to laugh like this all day.
I'm
Thank you so much.
sorry.
No, don't apologize.